Julius Caesar and Jesus. And why am I even mentioning their names like this? Well, you're about to find out. Because there's a number of intriguing similarities, suggesting that the Gospel writers may have drawn inspiration from Julius Caesar's life and death. But before I get into all of that, please subscribe to the channel and like the videos. That will help the channel grow and our message to get out to the world. This is Tannock TV back with another one, and I know the haters will definitely be mad about this video. But it's all GOOD good though. Now let's start with Julius Caesar. He cemented his political dominance through Clementia Caesaris, Caesar's clemency, a deliberate strategy of forgiving, pardoning and promoting former enemies to pacify Rome. Rather than executing rivals or confiscating their wealth, he brought them into his inner circle, a political gamble that ultimately backfired on the Ides of March. Julius Caesar's policy of pardoning his enemies, known in Latin as clementia, was primarily a calculated political strategy designed to legitimize his rule, pacify a traumatized Roman public, and win over the loyalty of the ruling class. The primary reasons behind this unprecedented approach included avoiding the terror of Sulla. A generation earlier, the general Sulla seized Rome and used bloody proscriptions, public execution lists, and property confiscations to wipe out his rivals. Caesar specifically pardoned his opponents to draw a sharp moral contrast and prove he was not a tyrant. Winning hearts and minds. As he famously wrote to his advisors, his goal was to fortify ourselves by mercy and generosity. By letting former enemies live, and even restoring their political offices, he hoped to turn them into grateful allies and neutralize opposition. Legitimizing his rebellion, Caesar needed broad institutional support to govern. By absorbing prominent nobles and senators back into the fold, he maintained the illusion that the Republic was functioning normally and legitimized his takeover of power. The unintended consequences. While his clemency was initially a highly effective political weapon that stunned Roman society, it ultimately contributed to his downfall. For many proud Roman aristocrats, being pardoned by a rival was deeply humiliating. Furthermore, it left his bitterest political rivals alive, and many of the men he forgave, such as Marcus Junius Brutus, later formed the conspiracy that assassinated him on the Ides of March in 44 BC. Wow, that didn't enter well for Mr. Caesar there. Let's see the similarity with Jesus here. Now, Jesus' teachings on forgiveness and love of enemies are among his most radical and defining directives, found primarily in the Sermon on the Mount, Matthew chapter 5 and the Sermon on the Plain, Luke chapter 6. These principles center on extending grace unconditionally, breaking the cycle of retaliation, and mirroring God's indiscriminate love for all humanity, the command to love enemies. Historically and culturally, prevailing norms often allowed for loving one's neighbor while hating or avoiding one's enemy. Jesus subverted this entirely. Active goodwill. Jesus commands his followers to love your enemies, do good to those who hate you, bless those who curse you, and pray for those who mistreat you. Luke chapter 6 verses 27 to 28. Love is presented as a deliberate action and an attitude of seeking the enemy's ultimate good, rather than a mere feeling. Imitating the divine. This radical love is how humanity mirrors God. Jesus points out that God is kind to the ungrateful and wicked, sending sunshine and rain on both the righteous and the unrighteous. Matthew chapter 5 verse 45. By loving their enemies, his followers demonstrate that they are children of the Most High. Luke chapter 6 chapter 35. Shaking my head. Yuck gave us life and we do have free will, but best be assured that if we continue to sin and practice abominations, Yah will take action. He did in the time of Noah with the great flood and after the flood with Sodom and Gomorrah. Yah isn't going to allow the wicked to live unless they repent. Remember the story of King Manasseh in the Tanakh, the mandate for forgiveness. Jesus inextricably links our need for God's forgiveness to our willingness to forgive others, the Lord's Prayer. In the prayer Jesus taught his disciples, he includes the petition, "Forgive us our debts, as we also have forgiven our debtors," Matthew chapter 6 verse 12. This underscores that receiving divine grace requires offering earthly grace, the condition of grace. Jesus explicitly warns that if we withhold forgiveness from those who wrong us, God will similarly withhold it. Matthew chapter 6 verses 14 and 15. Limitless forgiveness. When asked how often a person should be forgiven, Jesus famously answered, not 7 times, but 77 times, or 70 times 7, depending on the translation Matthew chapter 18 verses 21 and 22, signifying an unending, limitless lifestyle of forgiveness. Practical application: turning the other cheek. In Matthew chapter 5 verses 38 to 42, Jesus addresses the eye for an eye mentality. Instead of escalating conflict, he commands his followers to not resist an evildoer. If someone strikes your right cheek, turn the other. If someone sues for your shirt, give your coat as well. In their cultural context, these actions were not about passive weakness, but about non-violent resistance asserting human dignity, surprising the oppressor, and breaking the traditional cycle of violence and revenge. Shaking my head. That is practically stupid. Now let's go back to Julius Caesar. Now this is one of the most famous genealogical claims in history. Julius Caesar claimed his family, the gens Julia, was directly descended from the goddess Venus through her son, the Trojan prince Aeneas. This divine lineage became a major part of his political messaging and propaganda, the royal lineage. According to Roman myth, Aeneas fled Troy and settled in Italy. His grandson, Iulus, or Ascanius, founded the Julian family. Therefore, tracing his family back to Iulus meant tracing his bloodline directly to a goddess. Venus Genetrix. Caesar established a temple dedicated to Venus Genetrix, Venus the Mother, in his newly built forum in 46 BC to honour his mythological ancestor. Propaganda on coins. He frequently put images of Venus and Aeneas on Roman coinage to remind the public of his semi-divine ancient heritage. This was an incredibly powerful political tool in ancient Rome. Because the Julian family claimed divine roots, Caesar was able to project an image of natural superiority, destiny, and unshakable authority to the Roman public. Okay, so Mr. Caesar claimed to be a descendant of the goddess Venus. Let's see what Jesus claimed. Jesus explicitly and implicitly identifies himself as the Son of God. This claim is central to the New Testament, establishing his divine nature and his unique, eternal relationship with God the Father. Key New Testament declarations. While Jesus often preferred the title Son of Man in his public teachings, he directly affirmed his identity as the Son of God on several critical occasions. The trial before the high priest. When directly asked if he was the Son of God, Jesus replied, "I am." This bold declaration led the religious authorities to condemn him for blasphemy. The Gospel of John. Jesus openly speaks of his divine origin, stating in John chapter 10 verse 36 that he is the Son of God, and affirming his unity with the Father in John chapter 10 verse 30. Now Julius Caesar was betrayed by Marcus Junius Brutus in one of the most famous events in ancient history. On March 15th, 44 BC, the Ides of March, Brutus joined a group of conspiring Roman senators and stabbed Caesar to death at the theatre of Pompey. Despite having fought against Caesar during the Roman Civil War, Brutus was pardoned and welcomed into Caesar's inner circle. Caesar treated him like a son, making the betrayal deeply personal. The iconic phrase, "You too, Brutus," comes from William Shakespeare's play Julius Caesar. Historical accounts of Caesar's actual final words vary. The historian Plutarch records that Caesar may have simply pulled his toga over his head and given up once he saw Brutus, while Suetonius suggests he may have spoken no words at all. So Caesar was betrayed by Marcus Junius. Brutus. Now let's see who betrayed Jesus. It was Judas Iscariot, one of Jesus' 12 original disciples, betrayed Jesus to the religious authorities, the Sanhedrin, in the Garden of Gethsemane. So we have Marcus Junius, Brutus, and Judas. These names though. Let's see who the first person was who stabbed Julius Caesar. Publius Servilius Casca Longus was the first person to stab Julius Caesar on the Ides of March, according to ancient Roman historians such as Plutarch and Suetonius. Now let's see who stabbed Jesus on his side when he was on the cross. The Roman soldier who pierced Jesus' side with a lance is traditionally named Longinus, while the original biblical text in the Gospel of John merely mentions an unnamed soldier. Later Christian tradition identifies him as a centurion named Gaius Cassius Longinus. According to legend, he converted to Christianity after his partial blindness was healed by the blood and water flowing from Jesus' wound. So the first person who stabbed Julius Caesar was Publius Servilius Casca Longus, and the Roman soldier who pierced Jesus was Longinus. Now, around 80 BC, a young Julius Caesar was sent as an ambassador to King Nicomedes IV of Bithynia to request a fleet of ships. While the mission was successful, Caesar's extended stay at the royal court spawned enduring rumours of a romantic and physical relationship between the two men. The encounter is one of the most famous and persistent scandals from antiquity. So King Nicomedes was, and Julius Caesar were meeting up on some Meek Mill and Diddy Baby Oil stuff. Yucky! Now let's see who secretly visited Jesus at night according to the Gospels. Nicodemus, a Pharisee and member of the Sanhedrin, the Israelite ruling council, visits Jesus secretly at night in the Gospel of John, chapter 3. He comes to Jesus to acknowledge his miracles as signs of God's presence, sparking a famous conversation about spiritual rebirth. So we have King Nicomedes and Julius Caesar, and Nicodemus and Jesus. I can definitely see how they took the names of some people in the life of Julius Caesar and changed it a bit and created these characters in the Jesus narrative, but let's continue. Now, at Julius Caesar's funeral in 44 BC, the crowd was shown a wax effigy suspended on a mechanical device that rotated to display his 23 stab wounds rather than the actual body. It was on a tropaeum, a Roman military trophy used to display captured arms. Key details of the funeral: the effigy. Because his actual body on the bier was lying flat and was mostly hidden, Mark Antony and the organisers used a mechanical life-sized wax statue. The mechanism. The effigy was rotated in all directions so the crowds could clearly see the savagery of the 23 wounds inflicted by the conspirators. The cross. While some modern theories and fringe historical interpretations connect this display to a cruciform tropaeum, which historically had a cross-like frame for armour, it was fundamentally a funerary monument for a fallen millet. One would have to be completely brainwashed by Christianity to not think that the authors of the Gospels didn't draw any inspiration from the story of Julius Caesar. In the future, we will go deeper into things with the entire narrative surrounding Jesus. The authors of the New Testament took from so many pagan tales and took from the life of Julius Caesar and how the sequence of events and locations in Jesus' ministry structurally mirror the exact geographical military campaigns of Titus Flavius as he marched through Judea. The entire New Testament is phony baloney. Yah is our Elohim. Yah the Most High. Hallelujah. This is Tanakh TV. Love you all. Shalom, everyone.